Okay, so welcome to choosing the right tools for your course. And you'll notice the emphasis on your, and that's definitely intentional because there is no right tool. And I just want to double check. You guys can see my screen, right? Good.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Amy. Okay, so there is no right tool. There's only a right tool for you. So that's where I wanted to start with this. And my hope for this session is that you'll walk away feeling empowered to make those kinds of decisions. So my name is Audrey Brickley, and my MS is in instructional technology, and I'm an ITC in ITS learning technology. And by the end of this session, you should be able to explain how instructional technology tools fit into your course design, list some key considerations for choosing tools, identify UNCG's primary offerings for instructional technology, and we'll also talk about how to get support. And then before we dig in, I did want to point out that UNCG is technology rich, right? We have a lot of tools that do a lot of things, and we are really very lucky in that way. And so my colleagues in the field from other institutions will often tell me that they're amazed by what we offer here at UNCG. But there's a but, and it's a big but, and that's that it can be very overwhelming. And this is kind of why I mentioned that my MS is in instructional technology. Like, it's a discipline. And I know there's a lot of pressure for y'all to be on top of technology and everything, but it's an entire discipline. And you already have your discipline. And so this is just to say, if you ever feel like you don't know how to navigate this whole world of instructional technology, that's okay. It's big and it's a lot. But my goal here is to empower you and to feel good about making these decisions and sorting through those choices. So let's dig in. And this is where it really starts. It starts with learning outcomes. And are any of you familiar with Quality Matters? I know Amy is, and Laura is. Amy's my partner in crime on Quality Matters training. And Laura came to our Applying the Quality Matters rubric session I guess it was a few months ago now. And it's really the gold standard in online course design. So they publish a rubric for online course design, and that's based on the literature. So they have a committee of experienced online instructors and instructional designers who get together every few years, and they publish updates based on what they find. And this right here is what QM calls an essential standard. And that is the tools used in the course support the learning objectives or competencies. And what I mean by essential standard is that it's non-negotiable in QM world. So Quality Matters has determined that this is so important to course quality that a course has to do this in order to meet expectations of the rubric. And what that really means is that we're not using technology for technology's sake. We're not like hearing that virtual reality is the next big thing in higher ed and then trying to like invent a reason to use it. We're using it because it supports our learning goals. We're not using clickers or some app because like Jim down the hall said it's the best thing to ever happen to him. If we use it, it's because it's clearly tied to students being able to meet the learning outcomes. And this is how I like to explain it to make it super clear and memorable. I'm personally a Lowe's shopper, so I would love to call it that, but like we have Lowe's Foods down here in the South, and I want to make it memorable, not confusing. So think of it like this. You don't walk into Home Depot and walk around the store looking at the tools and picking one up because it's cool, and then take it home and look around to figure out what to do with it in your house. Right? You go to Home Depot because you have a goal. You want to paint your living room, for example. So you go there and you look for the right tools for the job. You get a drop cloth, the tape, the rollers, all that stuff, because those are going to support your ability to paint your living room. So another way to think of it is like, consider if you heard your colleague who teaches biology, they're describing this amazing activity they did in their class with microscopes, and the students were so engaged and they loved it. But you teach literature, you probably wouldn't get swept up and start thinking about how to use microscopes in your literature course, right? But that can happen with instructional technology tools. They can be flashy and exciting, and they probably have like a whole marketing plan and salespeople trying to convince you that they're going to solve all your problems. But we want to keep our eyes on the prize, right? The learning goals. There are going to be tools that will be right for you and your class and your learning outcomes, and there will be tools that aren't, and that's okay. So we're going to walk through a few examples. And the first learning outcome says that by the end of the course, you'll be able to defend your position on a contemporary moral issue. And so here the thought process looks like, I need a tool that will allow students to demonstrate that they can defend their position on an issue, right? So we want to have a discussion or a debate where students are challenging each other and defending their positions with like well-reasoned arguments and evidence and all that. So how can I make this happen? In a discussion board, right? So the thought process behind choosing this tool wasn't, I heard I'm supposed to have a discussion board because that's something I'm supposed to do and everybody does it. So, you know, it's not like just inventing a topic to use a discussion board in your course. The thought process is, this is going to support the learning that needs to happen in this class. And really, this would be a great way to set this up, even in a face-to-face class. So, you know, you could have a debate in the classroom, but using a Canvas discussion board as a tool to support the development of this skill really gives students the time and space, right? To read, to think, to digest, to take a moment and reflect on what the other student is saying, and then formulate their defense, compared to say in the classroom on the spot. And you might be building toward that, right? Maybe eventually you want your students to be able to do it on the spot, face to face. But this Canvas tool, the discussion board, will help them, you know, that will support their ability to develop that skill. So another example, by the end of this course, you'll be able to analyze a journal article. So think about it like this. I want to set up a practice activity. So I think about like, what does that involve? And a tool that would allow that practice activity here might be the student annotation submission type on a Canvas assignment. And let me show you what that looks like if you're not familiar, because this is actually very new in Canvas. So you can now like upload a document, a PDF or whatever to an assignment and have students use the annotation tools that you and I are used to using in SpeedGrader to annotate that document that you gave them. It's really cool. And giving them this practice, this opportunity to practice this skill and get feedback supports that learning objective, right? Maybe you give them a journal article to analyze and like mark up. And so one more, by the end of this course, you'll be able to identify appropriate anatomical and scientific terminology of the structure and function of the human digestive system. So this one, it's a lot to remember, right? Students are going to have a ton of information they need to remember that they'll continue to use throughout their program and beyond. So I decide I want to include some retrieval practice activities. So in the classroom, I might use a student response system like clickers or polling software. And then I might also assign a few practice quizzes on Canvas. So is this making sense? The question is not, how can I use this or that tool, but rather, what tools will support my learning outcomes? And I want to introduce you to a really helpful tool in this process. And you may be familiar with this concept. I call it a course map. You might have heard the term alignment chart here at UNCG. I call it a course map because it kind of maps everything in your course to your learning outcomes. So you can develop this, and a lot of people do this in a spreadsheet with like listing all your learning outcomes in one column. And then next to it, you start adding your materials, your activities, your assessments, all the things that are in your course mapped to those learning outcomes. And this kind of gives you a bird's eye view of your course. So let's take a look at a specific example. You can see that last example from identifying the terminology for parts of the human body. So I list out each thing I do in my course that contributes to students' ability to do that thing. My readings, my videos, my content, and my learning activities, my practice activities. Then in the next column, I list my assessment. How do I know that students can do this thing? So this is the evidence students are going to provide to me to demonstrate they've achieved the learning outcome. So now here's where this course map is super helpful for navigating the world of instructional technology, which is always changing and evolving and improving and all that. And it can be very overwhelming. So, and also just like teaching strategies and like pedagogy and the teaching tips from the newsletter, all of those things. This kind of clarifies how, where, and even if those things will fit into your course design, right? So in this example, I know that an exam is the assessment strategy I want to use for this learning outcome. And because it's basically dealing with like terminology, this is a great opportunity for me to create a Canvas quiz because I can use the auto grading feature there. Right? I won't have to spend any time grading this. Whereas I'm looking at my course map and I see that I have these other outcomes where a machine can't grade it for me. I need to devote my time, my grading time to these outcomes. So here's an opportunity for me to use this great tool in Canvas that will auto grade if they can identify the correct terminology for the different parts of the digestive system. And then looking at my materials and activities and asking myself, how am I going to get my students there? How am I going to get them there to that learning outcome? And what kinds of materials and activities will support that? So you might decide to record a lecture that they can watch and re-watch and incorporate some retrieval practice questions into that video with a tool like Canvas Studio, where you can like add embedded questions throughout the video right in there when they're watching it. And so when you know what your goals are and what evidence of achievement of those goals looks like and how to support achievement of those goals with relevant materials and activities, then when your colleague tells you about a new tool or UNCG announces that we're getting this great new platform, or you go to a conference and you learn all about all these great things, you have this map and you can identify how and if that will fit into your course design. So I've worked with a lot of instructors on this, and I will admit they kind of hate me at first when they start doing it, but once they have it, they absolutely love it. It's really empowering. And I think that everybody's doing this for the new MAC curriculum anyway. So this is just an idea also about how to use that when it comes to instructional technology. You can get such a clear picture of how you're getting students to where you want them to go. And then you can easily identify what kinds of tools will help get them there, right? So we're going to move on to a couple. Any questions about that before I move on? Okay, thank you. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. And if you have any questions at the end, we can address them there, and I'll just keep watching the chat. So we're going to move on to a few additional considerations before we start looking at our tools specifically. And so I've got a meme here because I love it. It cracks me up. So if you can't see it very well, it says, teachers, just log into Zabblezoot. Scroll down to the Zork app and have kids work through the assignment sent through Cracklezam or check the links posted in Drumblekick. And then it shows a parent with their hands on their hips, kind of scowling. And I feel this so hard as a parent who had kids in virtual school over the last year and a half, because technology can be a distraction from learning. Technology should not be a distraction from learning. It should simply support learning. And it was like, imagine like this quote 6 times with 6 different sets of tools for each class my kid had each day. And I would be like in tears by the end of the day. And I literally have a master's degree in instructional technology. So it can be really overwhelming. And I'm a huge fan of keeping things simple. And if there's a way to do it in Canvas, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to recommend that that's like your solution. And if it's something that Canvas already does well, this other tool would have to be pretty special for me to recommend it. And Canvas really does pretty much have everything you need to create a dynamic and engaging course. And that is a really student-friendly approach for a number of reasons. And one of those reasons is cost. This is definitely a consideration. We want to ask ourselves, what is that cost to students? And what's the benefit to learning that this tool offers? And we want to weigh those things. And then just a little sub question, who told you about that benefit? Because these ed tech companies, they have salespeople and they will tell you things and they will sound very persuasive, and they might cherry pick a study to tell you about. And I will say, like, tools that I really like, they also do this. It's just the way it is. So I would just take those things with a grain of salt. And obviously we can, ITCs, we can help you sort through those things and all of that. So just don't get too swept up when they start, tossing these studies out and making big promises. And then the same with accessibility. Will this tool work for all of my students? And this is another one where you just really want to look into what the salespeople are telling. So I used to work in accessibility, and they would make these big promises. to our faculty about the accessibility of the products. And they'd like demonstrate that their videos have captions, and then they'd quickly move on. But captions are just one small piece of the accessibility puzzle. And then the instructor would start using them, and we'd find out that, this tool is like riddled with accessibility problems. And then once we start using it, it becomes our problem, right? When we have a student who can't use those tools. So this is a question to ask before you start using a tool. And then engagement. This is a big motivator, I think, for instructors when they're seeking out new tools. They want to engage their students. And I always just like to start with the fact that like engagement is not synonymous with fun. When we talk about engagement with learning, we're looking for ways that students can connect with the content, with you, and with each other. So active learning opportunities to engage in relevant activities, authentic applications of those concepts we're dealing with in class. Or maybe a tool like Studio might help students see you and hear you in an online class for you to convey your enthusiasm, to encourage them. Or a tool might help them engage with each other in a meaningful way like that, to build that community of learners. And we know that contributes to academic motivation. But we're still thinking about that connection to our learning outcomes. So it's not to say you need to like actively avoid making things fun. So maybe you decide to gamify an activity or something, and that can tap into engagement by including rewards and community building and all that. But fun isn't the goal, learning is the goal, and achieving the learning outcomes is the goal. Next, what will students use in the wild? And this can be a part of the hidden curriculum. So maybe it's not like an official learning outcome in your course, but maybe you teach business, and business, Microsoft's king in the business world. So maybe you hear a lot of your colleagues talking about the benefits of Google Docs, but in your field, they're really going to have to be proficient with Word. So that might influence your choice here, or vice versa. Maybe in your field, Google Docs is king, and you can kind of ignore all the chatter about all the features that Microsoft has that your colleagues love. And we're really lucky to have both here at UNCG, but it's another one of those cases where it might not be apparent immediately why you choose one over the other. So that's a good thing to think about. And here's a fun one, the click wrap. Does anyone know what this means? This comes from the Office of General Counsel. And a lot of people think it's ITS, but it's actually General Counsel. And this process asks a lot of questions to like safeguard our students and employees, including like security, their data protection, their privacy, all those things. So when we kind of scroll to the bottom and click accept, yes, the dreaded click wrap. They're sitting and reading that, so we don't have to. Okay, so let's think of it that way. And typically in ITS, we're going to recommend things first, like our official platforms, Canvas, Zoom, Box, Panopto, all those official things that we've adopted here on campus. And then we're also going to generally stick to tools that are click wrapped. And I just put two examples there to show you what it looks like. So Dropbox, not approved. So here in ITS, I'm not going to recommend that you use Dropbox with your students, but then you can see Microsoft products are all approved, just to show you what this kind of looks like. And you can find this simply by Googling, the UNCG General Counsel, and you'll see a link to the list of click-wrapped software on their menu. And it's not fun. It's not a fun one, but it's important to think about because, and this is actually another Quality Matters standard, like how are we safeguarding our students' data and protecting their privacy. And a lot of us don't really know how to do that, but they do. So it's great, even though it's a tough topic. And then finally, just personal preference, like your personality. What do you like? This is a big part of what I'm feeling out when I do a consultation with an instructor. So is this person adventurous with technology, or are they really hesitant? And does technology, does using it in front of students make you really nervous and uncomfortable? And these are all important considerations that can definitely influence what tool is right for you. You should feel comfortable with the tools that you choose. Technology should not be a distraction for your students or for you. So there might be a great tool that's a great solution for another instructor that might not be great for you for these reasons, and that's okay. But I will say that people who use technology understand and kind of accept that things can go wrong. You heard me. I checked with you guys to make sure that you could see my screen at the beginning of this, because I've made that mistake, right? It happens. Stuff's going to happen with technology. And I just try to model like rolling with it, because it is what it is. And I think students really get that. And honestly, like, it helps students feel more connected to me when I'm like fumbling with technology a little bit, or my faculty I'm working with, because none of us are perfect, right? Those things connect us, actually. And so speaking of that, I'll just do a shameless plug for my my spring literary circle, which is The Gifts of Imperfection. That's the book I'm doing in the spring. If you want to keep an eye out for that, I think it's going to be really good. And then finally, UNCG's toolbox. Let's take a look at what we have. But before I do, I want to point out that we have lots of experts on campus. So I'm an instructional technology consultant in ITS, but each school also has their own ITC, and you can always find that info on the Keep Teaching website under Help. And you can also get a link to Six Tech there, which is the best way to locate me. You can submit a ticket, and if you name me in the ticket, it'll get routed to me really quickly. But you can also always find help within your own school with your ITC. And they have like the most up-to-date information about school-specific tools, in addition to the university-wide tools that I'll be talking about. And they're a great resource. So looking at our primary offerings specifically, starting with Canvas. Like I said, Canvas has basically everything you need to design your course and run your course. And we could talk about Canvas all day, about everything it does. But just going back to ITCs as support, our job is to know the features of our tools. So if there's something you want to accomplish in Canvas, but you're not sure how, it's what we're here for. But I also wanted to point out this Canvas instructor guide, because you can see it has the question, it has the entire Canvas instructor guide is formatted with questions. How do I? And this is how faculty approach Canvas, right? How do I do this thing I want to do? And so if you're not the type of person who wants to like immediately reach out to someone for support as the first step, this could be a great resource for you. I mean, I totally get that. I can be that way too. I just want to read about it first, and maybe I can figure it out on my own before I reach out to someone. So I did put the URL there at the bottom, but you can simply Google Canvas instructor guide and you'll find it quick and easy. So Zoom, and I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on Zoom because we all know it, we're in it. But I'm gonna go over our video platforms kind of one by one, because I wanted to kind of point out what differentiates them from each other. And so the main thing about Zoom is that it provides this real-time interaction. If that's what you need to support learning in your class, this is the tool for you, whether you're at home or in your office or in the classroom. You can use Zoom for that real-time interaction with people who aren't sharing space with you. And it is integrated in Canvas, so you can just schedule in there, and your students can easily find everything. And then just one point, that the shelf life of recordings in Zoom is very short, so 30 days. And we don't have a lot of storage available in Zoom. And then all of a sudden, everybody started using it for everything. So it gets filled up really quick. So if you want to keep your Zoom class session recordings longer than those 30 days, like especially if you want to make your recordings available to students for the duration of the semester, we do have a solution for that, and it's called Panopto. And this is our lecture capture solution. So just to get the Zoom Panopto point out of the way first, before we talk about what Panopto is really for and what it does, it is integrated with Zoom via Canvas. So it's not integrated with Zoom anywhere else, only in Canvas. So that means if you add both Zoom and Panopto to your course navigation and click on it, you got to make sure to click on Panopto to like activate it in your course. Then you don't have to do anything else. And any Zoom sessions you schedule in Canvas will automatically be copied there and stay there indefinitely. And if you have any questions about that, we can talk about it later. Because I want to really focus on what Panopto is for. And I want you to focus on those words, lecture capture. And that's what it's really meant for, to capture lectures, to record your lectures in the classroom. And pretty much all of our classrooms are outfitted to do this with like cameras and microphones and all that. But what Panopto does not do is give you the interaction that you have in Zoom. It's not meant to like have students join your class from outside the classroom and participate. You can use Zoom for that, and using those same microphones and cameras that are in the classrooms. And I personally, like, the best way I think about it is to think of Panopto as like TV for your class, because it's one way. Right? There's nothing happening here, no back and forth. Students can watch from home, but they can't participate. And also, if you have a lot of discussion or activities going on, Panopto is not great at capturing that. That's why they call it lecture capture. So if you have a very lecture heavy course, it's going to do a great job capturing what you do at the front of your classroom. That's what it's for. And so you can see in my screenshot here, it's captured me at the very front of my classroom in front of the lectern. And it's captured my dot cam, and I can share my screen or my slides. But imagine what this would look like if there was a lot of activity in the classroom, or what it would sound like. It doesn't do a great job at that. It's not going to be pleasing to watch that. So I like to think of Panopto really as lecture capture. Okay, Canvas Studio. And this is a tool that really allows you to create, can videos from other platforms be linked to Panopto? Is a question in the chat. And the answer is yes. First of all, Zoom is automatic, but if you have any other recordings or videos from any other platform or your phone or whatever, you can upload them to Panopto. So as long as you can download that video from that other platform, you can then upload it Panopto, but it's the only one where it's automatic, that linked connection is Zoom. You're welcome. Okay, so Studio is all about like kind of sitting at your desk and creating video content for your students. And this can be like a little lecture or a course intro video, or, you know, you're just introducing yourself to your class and going over your syllabus, all of those things, because it can capture your webcam and your screen, just like Zoom does, or a combination of both. And that's what you see in my little example here in my screenshot. So I recorded a slide. This is just a slide that I was recording and my webcam. And it kind of just puts them together, and I can move this around if there's like stuff on my slide that it's very customizable, and it's really fun to use, and it's really cool. It makes for engaging videos because it's got some neat features like commenting. So you can see I left a comment at 12 seconds on the video, and so when students are watching this will pop up here. They'll be able to see, oh, there's a comment here, and students themselves can comment on those videos. And you can also add, okay, question in the chat. Is there a way to change the resolution on studio videos? I have found that students sometimes can't see my slides very well because of poor resolution. So yeah, we maybe can set up a consultation to look at your videos and see why that's happening. Panopto does some of those things, and it's more customizable on that front. So you can actually sit at your desk and create a video with Panopto, and there you can actually go in and change the resolution and make it super ultra high definition, which might help your students, it sounds like. And that's just a great example. I love that question, because I can't tell you about every feature of every platform here. And when you want to do something, like, it's our job to know what's going to work best for you. So thank you for that question. That was such a great example. Okay, so I think I was saying that you can add quiz questions, and I think I mentioned that before. And another cool thing about Studio is that you can have your students use it. They can use it too for assignment submission. So you can have them record a video and then submit it as their assignment. And I've seen this used in all kinds of great ways, from like a dance class when we went virtual. So the students were recording themselves doing the dance, and then the instructor was then able on their submissions to go in and make little comments at the relevant points in that video, which is so amazing. And then I've also, seen it used for like student presentations, or even like a video-based discussion board. So when we're setting up a Canvas discussion board, but instead of typing our responses, we're recording them, which can be really cool. And like students can give each other feedback in the same way. It's a really powerful engagement tool. Okay, so moving on to Google and Microsoft. We all know these, Word, Docs, PowerPoint slides, Excel sheets. Like it's kind of comparable in those big functions. And we talked a little bit earlier about choosing based on that, but about like what they're using in the wild. But there's also like just the general differentiator that that like Microsoft has more features. Google's easier to use, right? So there's like a trade-off there. Google's a little bit easier to collaborate with. Microsoft allows you to do that on, Office 365, but it's maybe not quite as like intuitive as doing it in Google Docs. So what are you trying to accomplish? So it's there's a lot of considerations there, but I wanted to point out that they actually have lots of apps. Each of them actually have many apps beyond those big ones that we think of. And the best way to really think about this is to just dig in and like you can find these little waffle menus at the top of each one. So if you're in Google, you'll see this little menu. And if you're in Office 365, which is just office.com, by the way, if you're not sure how to access that, you just office.com and then log in with your UNCG credentials. And you'll have these options and you can find all of these great apps. So like, for example, Google has Jamboard, which is a collaborative like digital whiteboard. And then Office has Notebook or OneNote, which is like a collaborative digital notebook. And so, we can't go into every detail of all these apps, but they're a fun thing if you one day are like trying to find a new tool or you want to see what's out there. There's a lot of productivity here stuff. So like to-do lists and all that. So it can be really cool. Okay, I'm gonna address the questions in the chat. So the first one, if you add a quiz question in Studio, where do the student answers go? Do they show up as comments? They do not. So it's actually, it's an embedded quiz. And it will record the answers, and you can actually set it up as a graded activity in Canvas. And I could show you how to do that later, but it can go either way, just practice or graded. So whichever way you want to set it up, and Studio does record their answers, and it can tell them, and you can even, just like a Canvas quiz, put some feedback in there. So if they answer it wrong, you can kind of put some feedback to automatically display. And then does it screen record? I meant record screen. And does the Quick Studio take uploads? Just Quick Studio take upload. So Studio does screen record, and it does also take uploads. So when you go to add a Studio video to your course, you get two options, which are, I think they might have changed the terms, but it's like add or record or something like that. And when you click the other one that's not record, that gives you the opportunity to upload your own video from your phone or any other app you use that you have the video file for. And then also, just for your information, it does also allow you to pull YouTube videos into your course. So if you have a video on YouTube, or if you found a great video on YouTube, you're welcome, that you want to embed some quiz questions on, you can do that with Studio, which is really cool. But that's the only one, not like Vimeo or any other sources, just YouTube. Okay, Respondus Lockdown Browser and Monitor. I kind of think of this one as my arch nemesis, to be honest. It's not my favorite because it's very controversial, and we'll get to that in a second. But what these are, it's like really two parts. Lockdown Browser can be used without Monitor. So what Lockdown Browser does is it prevents your students from being able to go to any other thing on your computer. So they can't go look up the answer on a website on their computer. If you optionally add Monitor, it'll also record a video of your student. It creates a recording of them that it then makes available to you to monitor them taking the test. So just what it sounds like, monitor. And the idea here is that it's more of a deterrent than anything else. So it's not the idea is not that you're going to sit and watch every video of your students taking the test for hours, but what it does is it uses AI to flag student videos, meaning it'll show you which students you maybe should look at. So it uses AI to say, hey, here's like the 5 students you probably should review their videos. And then it flags the points in the video where it thinks you should watch it. So, so then you can jump to those points in the video and it'll show you what it flagged. So it might say that it captured multiple faces in the video and it's worried that somebody's helping them on the quiz. And then you go and watch it and it's like a kid asking their mom for a drink, or it'll say it can't detect a face. So it's worried that the student has left the room to go look up an answer on their textbook or whatever. And you watch it and like the student is just like concentrating really hard and it's just capturing like their forehead or something. So long story short, I've reviewed a lot of these videos and I've never seen any suspicious behavior so far in the year plus that we've had it. But it is a little controversial and it's stressful. So I wouldn't recommend being too quick to use this one unless it's like a high stakes exam or something like that. Of course, go for it. But there's so much debate about this and it's uncomfortable, which creates a distraction for students while they're taking the quiz, right? Like, is that the best thing? We want to just think through that and be very intentional about how we use this. So, maybe do some reading, Google it. You'll see all kinds of perspectives on this. Talk to your ITC, talk to your students. And I also created a demo of this where you can sit through the process as a student in a course that I created. So if you're interested, I can enroll you in the course and you can sit and take a quiz and use the camera to like there's a requirement you can add to show the whole room. So, you want to see that there's nothing in the room that students can use to cheat. And so I have that enabled just so you can see what it feels like. And it's just a silly quiz and it's just going to be me watching it. But I think it's important to walk through that if you're going to require it of your students. And then finally, okay, I just have some tips in addition to ITCs and the Canvas instructor guide. And the main thing is really 6Tech. So again, you can reach me via 6Tech, but a lot of people don't know this is here, this Learn It part. And we have a knowledge base that's a great starting point. So let's say you want to use an Adobe product to create content and you're not sure if we have access, or you want to have your students use Qualtrics and like to collect data or something, and you're not sure like who qualifies for an account or how do I get access? How do I get started? This is a great starting point for that. So if you have that question, we probably have a KB for that. Like a KB is a knowledge base article. And so you can see it'll show you what it is, who's eligible, how do I get it, all of those things. And so sometimes I know it's just hard to know because things are always changing. We're always getting new tools and sometimes we're losing tools. So if you have a question, this is a great starting point. And then of course, we're always there. And again, it's our job. I just like to repeatedly point that out because I feel like 80% of faculty start their question with an apology to me. And I'm like, that's why I'm here. Like, it's literally why I have a job. So I appreciate your questions. Really, you don't have to feel bad about asking. It's job security. And with that, I'm just going to open it up to questions and, anything like we can talk about. And what's interesting to me is that faculty like to hear each other's questions. So don't feel like you have to take it offline. If you're not interested, feel free to leave. But I'm going to stop the recording now because we're at the end of the presentation. And then you guys can feel free to just unmute